Welcome to the CSBP Fertilizer's Grow Better podcast, sharing knowledge with growers on leading crop nutrition, sustainable agriculture and other issues impacting the agricultural industry.
G'day everyone, welcome to the CSBP Grow Better podcast. I'm Johnston and I'm joined here today by Miles Ellery, Agricultural Officer with the CSBP Field Research Team. G'day Miles, welcome.
How are you, Gray?
I'm pretty well, thank you. How are you?
Good, very well, thanks mate.
Good to hear. Now today we're talking about everything field research and trials and what we do in the trials team, the insight we're getting out of the trials this year, but most importantly Miles, we're here to talk about you. Tell us Miles, how did you come to join CSBP and tell us about your role with the business?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with CSBP for about a year now. Started halfway through seeding last year, so it was an initiation of fire, but it was great. So the Ag Officer role, we're very much a mix of technical, hands-on, working out in the field, and also a mix of data and extension for our research. So we work with our account managers, with our agronomists. We work alongside a couple of agricultural officers. There's about 4 of us in the team, and we manage about 30 to 40 trials per year.
And what's your background, Miles? How did you come to join the team?
Strangely enough, I don't come from a farming background at all. I just thought agriculture is a very interesting industry, and when I was about 21 decided I'm going to take the plunge and started studying a Bachelor of Agribusiness at Curtin, and I found this role last year as I was looking for a position within ag and thought this is going to expose me to just about every side of agriculture and really throw me in the deep end and I'll see if I can swim. So it's turned out to be all that and more.
Oh wow, very good. No regrets?
No regrets.
Oh,
very
brilliant.
happy.
Pleased to hear it. And what do you enjoy most about the role?
The most enjoyable thing is definitely all of the challenges that you face. It may sound a bit paradoxical, but being able to learn something new each day from the people you work with. I've got some very experienced and very knowledgeable colleagues from the farmers themselves, and from peers in other companies as well. I know a few people from uni that work with other companies, and being able to bounce ideas off our team, off sales staff and off agronomists, and just being able to stand and have a chat to a farmer for an hour about what they're doing this year is very interesting. That's
really cool. So for those who don't know about our trials program, can you give a bit of an overview? Tell us about what CSBP does in field research and why we do trials?
Yeah, of course. CSBP, being a fertiliser company, we obviously specialise in nutrition trials. So we're looking to see how fertilisers work best in different areas and in different farming systems. So WA is a very big state. We have a very expansive agricultural system which focuses primarily on broadacre, but we also have pastures and livestock systems as well. Our trials do focus on cropping systems, and we look at primarily the macronutrients, so nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and how different combinations of fertilisers will improve growers' productivity and optimise their farming systems.
And have we been involved in trials over a long period of time?
We have decades worth of trials. So it's really good to be part of a company that's been reinvesting back into the farming community for a long time.
So tell us about your season. I guess you've just finished seeding.
Yeah.
How did that go and how are things shaping up?
Our seeding was great. It was busy. It was a bit of a funny start to the year with rainfall, which often determines when people are going to start seeding. So this year we had trials stretching from Yuna up in the north, which is near Northampton, down to Gibson, which is close to Esperance. So quite an expansive range, and our trials took place over about 6 weeks. So it was definitely a busy time, but we have got trials in canola, lupins, wheat, barley, and we've stretched that into some favour beans as well this year. So there's a broad mix that we're looking at.
And I guess while you're out there seeding, your plot trials, you're also seeing growers out there seeding as well. Did you get a vibe of sentiment and
Yeah.
any changes in the rotations this year?
Yeah, for sure. I think at the start of the year there were concerns with the market. The volatility in pricing, be it inputs or labour or even grain pricing. It drove farmers' decision making to be probably a bit more risk averse. We saw some growers opting for legumes into the system where they're looking to capitalise on the nitrogen fixing capacity of legumes. But that did kind of veer away from that actually after the canola price skyrocketed back over $1,000 a tonne. So driving around there is definitely a lot of canola in the ground, and it is interesting to see the different stages that a lot of crops are at now, with some flowering very early, which went into the ground as early as March, and some which are looking very, very lush and looking to get a good return out of that.
Yeah, wonderful. So you've got the crop in the ground. What does the Ag Officer role in the field trials team, what are you up to at the moment? What does it entail for the next couple of months?
Well, now that we've finished seeding, our next couple of months are looking like applying our in-season fertilisers, and as part of that we look at the current state of the crop through visual assessments, through plant emergence counts, and through plant sampling. So we really try to utilise our CSBP lab to run plant samples through and see exactly what the nutrient uptake levels are like, what the plant weights are like, so we have a bit of a vision as to where that crop's heading and how we can maximise our fertiliser efficiencies on that.
And you talked about the range of crops that we're looking at this year within the program. What are some of the themes that we're investigating within those sort of 40-odd trials you talked about?
There is, as always, a big focus on nitrogen. So probably about half of our trials have got a major nitrogen element in them. Typically that looks at the rate, the source, the placement and the timing. But we also have a couple of alternative trials that we're looking at. The capacity of legumes to fix nitrogen, so how nitrogen fits into more of a system-based trials approach. So these are multi-year trials with multiple crops at the same trial site, and these will run for about three years with different rotations to see how much N is in the ground, how much is mineralised, how much is fixed by a legume crop, and how we can afford that into our nitrogen budgets. So as well as that, we've also got phosphorus and potassium trials, so particularly a phosphorus in high PBI soils, so gravelly soils will have a high phosphorus buffering index, which means phosphorus is less available to the plant. And so these ones are looking at how high we need to push our phosphorus inputs to get good yield results from those.
And are you seeing, I know we haven't obviously harvested the trials yet, but you're out and about all the time. Yeah. You talked before around how you're seeing there's some crops out there that are looking pretty well established and looking reasonably good. Are you seeing any visual differences or anything you're picking up in the trials so far year to date?
Yeah, definitely. Across all of our trials, nitrogen trials, we are seeing that treatments banded with Flexien have definitely stepped up in comparison to our nil fertiliser or nil nitrogen treatments. So having that N up front available to the plant early is really boosting their early vigour and plant numbers. You can see the crop is usually a tiller or two ahead or at the next growth stage, and it's got a much greener colour. It's a bit difficult to base a result off a visual assessment, but that's also why we do the plant sampling to get quantify those numbers. But additionally, in our phosphorus trials, we're certainly seeing a response to banded phosphorus. So we have some hybrid canola in those high PBI gravel soils, and we're certainly seeing plant counts and visual assessments where banded canola up to about 20 units of P is definitely stepping up. And also in the potassium, so we do have some wheat trials with potassium banded, comparing that to early potassium top dressed, and having that potassium as part of a compound fertiliser expanded with the seed, you can definitely see that early visual step up.
And you're running some pasture trials as well this year?
That's correct. We do have 2 pasture trials running this year. So while we do focus on cropping, there's definitely a big pasture element to our role, and pastures are very important for crop rotations and system rotations as well. One of the pasture trials that we're setting up this year, so this is the first year of a multi-year trial, is looking at different phosphorus rates or different superphosphate rates and comparing traditional superphosphate with our Super SR, which is a sustained release phosphorus product, which is primarily useful in sandy, high rainfall environments, which is typical in our southwest, where a lot of the beef, cattle and dairy industries are. And we're seeing some really good early responses from that. So we top dressed out our super phosphate in mid-March, and we've recently taken some pasture assessments in there and getting up to about a 4.5 tonne response in dry matter to 25 units of phosphorus.
Okay,
so
and that's with the sustained release product, or?
Yeah, so the superphosphate and the sustained release product are pretty much identical at this point.
Yep.
So it will be interesting to see how the superphosphate and the sustained release product will compare over the long term, and whether productivity in the straight superphosphate would need a secondary top up to match the productivity in the sustained release.
And this year, you've done something a bit different. You've put a trial in the ground in Kwinana, where we make a lot of our fertiliser.
Yes.
What was that like? Has that been received indifferently, well, negatively?
It's been received differently.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting decision, which is going to bring back some interesting results, I think. As we delved a bit deeper under the grass and found 5 or 6 different soil types within about 100 square metres, we stood there and scratched our heads a little bit about how we were going to make this work. But I think it will be interesting, and it's hopefully going to engage a lot of people on site who, might help dispense fertiliser, or might drive front-end loaders around the site, or work in human resources, and they'll be able to see exactly why we make fertiliser, and hopefully the old train track won't do too much damage.
No, really going to be really interesting to see how that goes. And as you say, certainly it's not strictly a nutritional trial, but it's really interesting to be able to engage people within the CSBP team at our Kwinana manufacturing facility, to keep them in the loop in where it all goes and what all happens to it. So I think well done on getting that one in the ground. Was a really cool initiative. So Miles, how can everyone out there listening in podcast world stay in touch with what's happening with your trials program this year? Anyone
who's interested in our results from either last year or our initial treatments and our setups for our trials this year can find them on csbpresults.com.au. That will have all of our information so far for the year, and as we continue to draw data, we'll be able to upload it on there. But additionally, I think it's always important to keep up a conversation with your account manager. If you particularly have a certain interest in a nutrient or in a crop type, and you're aware that there's a trial in your area, we're coming into the time when these visual differences are becoming very clear. And this is when we look to field walk these trials. So if you're interested in seeing it or just speaking about it, your account manager is a very good place to start.
And you'll be getting out and about doing some of those field walks?
I will. We'll be making sure they're nice and clean and ready for everyone to get down and get into their gumboots and have a wander through and see exactly how our interest in nutrition and research is going to potentially help their farm.
It's really great, and a brilliant initiative from CSBP, and a brilliant example here in Miles from the type of talent we're curating and developing at CSBP Fertilisers as well. So great to hear from you, Miles. 1 year into your journey as an ag officer, clearly a wealth of knowledge on all things agronomy, research, and things that are happening out there in the industry. So wonderful wonderful to hear you speak today about our trials program, and great that you can join us and share that knowledge with all the listeners out there in the world of the podcast. That's it from us today at the CSBP Grow Better podcast. Remember to slide into our DMs with any feedback on the show, and subscribe at CSBP Fertilisers on all your favourite social channels, and stay in touch with further episodes as they come out. That's it. I've been Gray Johnston, been joined here by Miles Ellery. Thank you, Miles.
Thanks.
See you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the CSBP Grow Better podcast. For more information about CSBP, please visit csbp-fertilisers.com.au or connect with us on social media at CSBP Fertilisers on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn.